I started seeing more and more injuries, and I saw the health professionals giving well-intentioned bad advice on weight training.
How did you bring them all together to where there wasn't, fights?
The biggest thing that I've noticed at SWIS is that everyone left their ego at the door.
Dr. Ken Kinakin is a chiropractor, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and personal trainer with over 40 years of experience in bodybuilding and powerlifting.
He is the founder of the Society of Weight Training Injury Specialists, SWIS.
I think the biggest thing from a dysfunctional standpoint is...
In this episode, you're going to hear from a dear friend of mine and mentor, Dr. Ken Kinakin, the founder of SWIS, Society of Weight Training and Injury Prevention Specialists, one of the most pinnacle conferences in the world of human performance. We dive into where the industry started to where it's heading, diving into figuring out ways to maximize your performance and your health, to getting the most out of your process as a coach or a therapist. If you ever wanted to understand what it's like to work with some of the best people in the world, this is the episode for you.
Oh, the fun part is put it all on Kiki to fix it.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you have to have good people. But doing a good job. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
I think for me, what's really cool is I want to share my journey through the people that I've met. And
that's cool.
I've been very fortunate to be around rooms that I probably didn't belong in when I was younger, but I think very kind of serendipitously, God puts me in certain environments around certain people at the right time. I think timing is everything. And I do believe God has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts me in certain environments at specific times. But one of them was yours long before I was ready. And I've now I want to share kind of the team of Avengers that I have with the world. But we can't do that unless people know who you are.
Right.
And you've been one of those people that have not only introduced many people to me, but you haven't introduced yourself to the world. So let's start out with who's Dr. Ken?
Okay, my name is Dr. Ken Kinakin. My profession is chiropractic, but I do a lot of other things. I've been in the weight training industry for over 40 years, competitive powerlifter for over 40 years, and I really enjoy the aspect of it. One of my main focuses, and I started this in 1999, is that I graduated in chiropractic in 1991, and I started to see more and more injuries, and I saw the health professionals giving well-intentioned bad advice on weight training. I also saw the fitness professionals giving well-intentioned bad advice on injuries. So in 1999, I decided to marry the two and bring them both together. And I created the Society of Weight Training Injury Specialists. And it was basically a giant experiment to see whether or not, if there was a need, which there was, and also the type of information. And what I saw was the integration and the appreciation of the health professionals working with the fitness professionals and both educating them together. So understanding if you do get injured, an exercise may not fix it, contrary to popular belief, what we see on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. We also see that doing surgery and also any type of manual treatment, whether it be chiropractic, physiotherapy, massage therapy, there's an exercise component to that too, rehabilitation, but also past rehabilitation. This is the activation. This is the actual proper training. So my focus has always been to prevent the injury, which is proper training technique and protocols. The second is if you do get hurt, because you probably will, what are the most appropriate treatments? And then from that, once you finish treatment, you phase into rehabilitation. And from that, you can really start to rebuild everything and how to prevent the injury from happening again. So that's been my real mission for the past 25 years. It started SWIS in 1999. It's 2024. I just held it 2 weeks ago. Justin came out and he was kind enough to come and present. We had over 500 people attend. We had over 30 presenters. And it was really, really powerful because this was a learn by doing. So it was more interactive, which I think what has happened in the conference industry, because right now you have social media education, which there's nothing wrong with it from the Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, but there needs to be other things with that.
Yeah, so SWIS was born late 90s. There was nothing like it at the time.
No.
And I think that
Still isn't.
no, but there's a lot of people trying. But I think what's really interesting specifically about SWIS is the marrying of lanes.
Yep.
And when I first started my coaching journey, I was introduced through high performance in sport by way of trust. Athletes, I was a counterpart of theirs. I was another athlete, but they trusted me. And that trust allowed me to help them through other opportunities. But I didn't know what you knew. I didn't know half of what I know now. And I think back and I'm like, oh my God, how many guys did I screw up back in the day? And I didn't really screw them up because I knew I didn't know enough.
Mhm.
I had a lot of confidence of like, hey, I understand what my job is. My job here is to do, to be in this role. But I think one of the key factors of success in sport is knowing your role.
Yep.
And in your line of work, what you've done with SWIS is you've married multiple industry disciplines.
Yes.
And you connected them together.
Yeah.
Because normally chiros don't like physios. Physios don't like trainers. Trainers tend to not like, orthopedics. Dietitians and nutritionists, they don't get along. And yet they're both talking about food.
Right.
How did you bring them all together to where, there wasn't, fights?
That's a good question. The biggest thing that I've noticed at SWIS is that everyone left their ego at the door. That when you bring in the best in the world, you can't really be arrogant. You have to have a sense of humility. The second part that I did is that I wouldn't invite the chuckleheads, which are people that think they need to tell everyone just how smart they are. You're being invited because you are smart. And so everyone had a sense of humility and also a sense of exploration, a sense of what can I learn from different aspects. Everyone there is a alpha, as far as their egos and everything else. But, if you're a 400-pound bencher and you're walking down the hallway thinking you're all that, you run into Kazmaier, who bench 661 in a T-shirt, it's like, you get deflated, or you think that you know everything with back rehab. And around the corner comes Dr. Stu McGill, who's probably one of the smartest people in low back rehabilitation, and also one of the most humble and nice. So the biggest thing is people would appreciate to learn, and also just inviting the right people. Because if there were some people that were not very nice or very kind, I just wouldn't bring them back. So that was, I weeded that out.
Yeah, I think it's a very unique skill that you have in bringing people together and highlighting their best work, so what they're known for. And I think it was interesting because you talk about being the best at what they do. It's like really the best at what they individually do. Yeah. So you have, the strongest man in the world, Bill Kazmaier, who, in my office for many years, kids would be like, what's that thing? And it's a frying pan.
Rolled up. He gave you one.
That Kaz rolled up, and it's like to Cav from Kaz.
Awesome.
And then it's got a little Jesus fish, little signature. So it's on my wall. But, which is interesting because, you meet this like, gorilla of a man. Like he's a massive human person. Like when I actually met him at the Arnold in Columbus years ago. And I remember I shook his hand and dropped him to a knee. I'm like, I'm not that strong. And it was like, to see him in so much pain and how he hit it in front of other people was incredible. And then he had to be this figure larger than life when he actually is larger than life.
Yeah.
And he let you guys work on him. He let you test stuff out, and his mind was just blown. Every year you would have Peter Gillette and David Leaf and yourself, and just experiment on people. But there's a sense of trust when you're the best in the world. Kaz allows you to do that. You got Ben Johnson there.
Yeah.
Like you got some of the best ever to do it in all of the individual disciplines. It does kind of put your ego in check a little bit.
Well, you have to. Like, I mean, if you got Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, and he's very kind, will answer any question and idea and concept. And the year after I had, Lee Haney present, 8-time Mr. Olympia. And again, just very nice, very kind. And that was the big aha that I learned through that was all these top people, the higher up the less that they actually have to prove.
Yeah, I think what happens is they're realizing like their role changes. Also, over time, their role turns into how do we then live, like keep this legacy living? Because initially, there was probably a place in their life. You brought up Dorian Yates, right? Like Dorian, there was a time where you couldn't work out with him, and he'd be like, "Bring it! You want to work out with me? Let me show you what I got." He'll break you.
Yep.
And he trained with some guys when he was there. He was like, "Hey, let's just go do some stuff." And it's like that is by the way, like the wisdom is so fascinating because I would say today still people think like, "Oh, that's cutting edge." Like he was doing that when he was competing. And I think it's cool to kind of bring that to the forefront of the industry because that's not what's being taught in college right now. And the gap is getting worse because they're removing the practicality to it. And you're bringing the practical education to the experts from people that have been there and done it, which is pretty, it's an honor. But I got to ask my question is, why do you do it? What's your reason? Because you've treated Tony Robbins, you've treated like some of the most important people.
Yeah, a lot of quote unquote famous people.
Yeah, but why do you do it?
The reason why I got into chiropractic is in the early 80s, I was getting ready. I compete powerlifting, so I was trying to make the Canadian team in powerlifting to go to the Worlds in powerlifting. And 2 weeks before, at that time, I was squatting about 525 at 165, drug-free. And 2 weeks before, just warming up at 400 squat, my right knee basically gave way and sounded like a bed sheet ripping. So I went, oh man. So I had to pull out. And then I spent the next 8 months, I was seeing medical doctors, I was seeing physios, I was seeing massage therapy. And I got back up to a 400-pound squat, but I couldn't go anymore because the knee pain was too much. My leg would give out. And I could run, I could go up and down stairs, normal things that, would aggravate a bad knee, but none of that bothered me. But weight training did, especially when I pushed the max. So my dad said, why don't you go see a chiropractor? I said, why? It's my knee, it's not my back. He says, go. So I went. And Merv Ritchie, he's a chiropractor. I'm originally from Kelowna, BC. So I went to see him. And, Merv is a marathon runner. And his arm is about this big. It's just, he's 130 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's doing muscle testing on me. And on my right side, I had no strength whatsoever. On the left side, I had full strength. And so he took x-rays. The whole pelvis was torqued and twisted along with the lumbar spine. And this is 8 months later. And he says, Ken, the knee actually, healed itself. But because the pelvis is torqued, it's causing a neurological inhibition, especially when it's called axial loading. So if you load the spine, that can cause an inhibition going down the leg, especially if it's
inhibition. Like break that down for me.
Inhibition is just you can't contract it. So the best example is if you fall asleep with your arm above your head, and all of a sudden, the phone rings and you try and, it just isn't working. It's got to wake up. So that's a nerve compression or nerve tension if that happens. Same thing happened in my pelvis. So he treated me for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden I was back. I got the full strength back neurologically, and that's the biggest issue that I've seen with people is that you have to understand why something may be weak. Is that it may be weak because it's deconditioned, where exercise is fantastic. It may be dysfunctional, meaning that it's not moving correctly, causing an inhibition, and that's more of a therapy. Sometimes exercises help. And then it's damaged. I call it D3. Deconditioned, dysfunctional, damaged. If it's damaged, this is surgery, this is PRP, this is regenerative medicine, a number of things. So you got to know what you're actually dealing with. And from that, once we got my leg working again, I was back squatting over 500, went to the Canadians, competed against Mauro Di Pasquale. He destroyed me, who was world champion at the time, but a good friend. He was the keynote speaker at my very first SWIS in 1999.
One of my favorite talks of him was actually when you did the charity event for dogs.
Yeah.
He did the Thursday night.
Yeah.
And it was just him.
Yeah.
And then he basically was like, let me get started. Then you asked a question. you're wrong. You're reading the question wrong. Let me fix that. And he just like went on this dissertation for like 40 minutes explaining everything.
Genetics.
Wow, this
he's
is
a
fascinating.
genius. Well, he's
Pretty smart guy.
He's one of the smartest men I've ever met, especially within medicine, anabolic steroids, and also technology. But also he was big into genetics too, way before that. And in fact, he was the very first person to identify creatine.
No way.
So he was in my clinic, and we were talking about creatine. He says, "Well, I was the first person, to discover it." And I went, "What?" I said, "No, Dan Duchesne." He says, "Absolutely not." He says, "Get my book." And it was the use of anabolic steroids in sport. So I got it. He says, "Turn to page 84." So he turned to page 84, and he went through, and he says, "See?" He says, "The reason why steak works so well for strength athletes, it has creatine in it. So that's why it works." And I went, and it was way before. It was in the early 80s that he wrote that book. So, and then everyone kind of ran with it, and people, Muscle Tech, Paul Gardner from Muscle Tech made millions, billions off of it. Everyone did. So
it's still to this day probably one of the most underappreciated supplements.
100%.
One of the biggest. I think it's one of the best brain supplements out there. It's something
that's what everyone's really saying. I'm just trying to read that.
It's funny because that's Thomas's candy every day.
Well,
I give it to him as a candy.
Well, Muscle Feast?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Well, I mean, there's different.
Yeah,
there's
but
different
that
ones
was
out
nice
there,
because it tastes like
it
candy.
tastes like candy for sure. 5 milligrams.
5 milligrams.
You're not gonna hurt. It makes brain good. It's like, hey, come get
Well,
some
you know
candy.
what? You know what's interesting? I was wondering how the creatine works.
Yeah.
And so creatine, its whole mechanism is it drives water into the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the water is in the cell, it increases the anabolic process. That's in the muscle. But I just did a presentation on brain thinning. And what we see is that if you don't have enough water, your brain, the gray matter, actually thins. So if you increase the water amount, your brain starts to work more. Well, I think that may be one of the mechanisms. I could be wrong. I probably am. But I think that's one of the aspects that creatine may be helpful because of the fact that it's more water dependent. Also increases ATP, obviously, a number of other energy systems. But those are all the really cool parts that we're starting to see more and more.
Yeah. So going back to why you created SWIS,
Tangent.
Yeah. You get hurt and you're on this pursuit of your,
Mm-hmm.
people, I think people want to find their limit, right? It's sport and in life, people that have some sort of driven purpose, they want to drive towards whatever that limit is. And you go to do that. And I think it's pretty evident, it's very clear that in high performance, you're going to get hurt if you're willing to push a limit because you're trying to find things out, right? If everything is always perfect, then there's probably a chance that you didn't compete at your best, or there's probably a chance that you didn't find your limit. So you're in this pursuit of that, and then you find home chiropractic. How did that again?
Well, the chiropractor was the only one that actually helped me out of everyone, and so I thought, wow, this is cool. And I'm a welder by trade, so I used to build bridges and a whole bunch of other stuff, and it was very unhealthy and very unsafe. But my focus was to build weight training equipment because I was still involved in the sport. And I thought, wow, if this modality of chiropractic, especially with the muscle testing, because that's what attracted me to it. And thank God that I met Merv with that style. And so my focus now was to go to chiropractic college. And from that, I was able to understand the body better. And then from there, over the years, especially from 1991 when I graduated to about 1999, I was presenting all over the place. And I saw the doctors giving well-intentioned bad advice on training. And I saw the fitness professionals giving well-intentioned bad advice on injuries. And so I thought in 1999, let's marry the two. And from that, we can learn and teach each other from a professional standpoint, especially when you're dealing with high-level athletes and also high-level academics and doctors and therapists, especially if they have their own technique. They are, how can I put this nicely, they're at such a high level, they usually don't go to anyone else's seminars because it wouldn't look good. And so we saw this with Dr. David Leaf, who teaches all the muscle testing, and Dr. Mike Leahy, who does the active release, which is a myofascial technique. And we tried getting them together, myself and a few other individuals, and it just didn't mesh. And so what happened is that when David was presenting on muscle testing, Mike Leahy sitting in the back, he goes, "Oh, so that's what you do." And then when Mike Leahy is presenting, David Leaf standing in the back, listening to him. So it's a safe from an ego standpoint that going, "Oh, so that's what active release is." And so both of them at the end of, the SWIS symposium that year, they went, "Hey, are you interested in coming to my seminar? I'll come on in for free and, it'll be great," and vice versa. And so that was the synergy. And that's one of my goals, is to introduce people to as many modalities as possible, whether it be therapy, whether it be training, whether it be nutrition. And when you bring everyone in with an open mind, then everyone can really, really benefit out of that. And that's what my main goal was to introduce as many new concepts and ideas. And so I travel the world. I go to, literally dozens and dozens of seminars a year to find some of the top techniques. And I see a lot of things as far as, oh, this would be helpful for that, and this would be helpful for that. And right now I'm into energy medicine. So, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, which is called PEMF. And so different frequencies, different modalities, and when would you use each one at different times? And so that's always been my goal, whether it be laser therapy, whether it be sound therapy, whether it be light therapy. It builds up. The big thing now is red light therapy, which is fantastic, and how you can utilize it. And so I actually have, I don't know if you know this, so I actually have a PEMF mat. What I did is that I bolted it on the wall in my
Get a little stronger.
in my gym at home in the garage, and so in between sets. So my goal this year is in 2025, we're in 2024 at the end, is to create as many modalities to increase the inter-set recuperation and then intra-set recuperation. So what are some of the different things? So can you use, a satellite, which is 10,000 lux? And I did this at SWIS, where I was actually able to increase someone's strength and range of motion in about 30 seconds just with a 10,000 lux light.
Yeah, and that's a simple solution. It's $30 on Amazon.
$30 on Amazon?
Link, and I got one for Tanya's office.
Yeah.
I got one for the desk. I got one for, just the room they get when they're getting ready. And it immediately sets your tone. It's actually got so many benefits for people that are not in environments with a lot of sunlight year-round.
Not a lot of sunlight, but you can also use it in between sets.
For recovery.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So you got to do something. Instead of going on your phone, why not just sit in front of a light, leaning against the mat on the wall, so you're getting two, and then I got some other wild shit that I'm working on.
Yeah, so like the wild shit, I think that comes down to this idea that you're willing to try and fail. Like you experiment a bunch of stuff. Like where did that knack come from? Where did the knack of being willing to try and fail to find, what works? Where did it come from?
I think
younger age?
Yeah, I think the first person was my dad. So, he was a genius in a lot of different ways. And so he was always very curious. He taught himself how to play musical instruments, and then he taught us. So we had a family band.
What do you play?
I play bass, guitar, drums, mandolin, dobro. So,
wow. What's your favorite type of music to play?
I like jazz. So I have a giant stand-up bass. I also have 3 other basses, Hagstrom and 2 Voxes. They're all from the 60s. My giant K bass is from the 1940s. So my dad collected all these instruments. So we got instruments from 1912.
I'd love to jam out with Clarence Clemens, big man. You would have loved to jam out with him.
Yeah.
He loved training. He was a huge dude.
Yeah. No, we would go to bluegrass festivals. And we would play a lot also, as my brother and my dad, And then my mom later on, she came in and she would also play. So those are great memories. The other
I
person,
think that like takes you into like a curiosity stage.
well, I think what it does is builds your right side of your brain as far as the creativity. So, music is always, involved in that. The other person was Charlie Francis. And so he said one quote that actually changed my life. And I know that you know Charlie well. And Charlie said, "It is the job of the researcher to explain what we see on the field.
Oh, wow.
Our training, our protocols, why does it work, and everything else. We don't do the research. The researcher is supposed to create. We see the effect of it, but, and Charlie was a huge experimenter.
Oh, God, yeah.
He would
Tested a lot of
experiment.
things. One of the, I got a concept in coaching called the Xerox, right? And I got it from Charlie. So God bless Doreen Mercer, who was my track coach, who still to this day, as much of a fireball that she was when I knew her when I was in middle school, and she had introduced me to some of the best, right? Jack and Jordan Kersey,
Wow.
Charlie, and some amazing people. But Charlie introduced me to this concept called being a Xerox coach. Of course, you don't know what that is, but the idea was very simple. It's like, he'll look over there, and there's a bunch of people that were like trying to copy what he was doing. And the idea is like, as you copy, well, it's going to get lesser quality. And if you didn't want to learn, if you genuinely were not kind of intellectually curious, then Charlie would basically be like, "Hey guys, it's Xerox day." And he would do drills that were dumb and fun and looked weird, just so someone would copy them and then say, "I saw this from Charlie." And then they would go and do it. And he would sit back on the thing, grab Snickers and eat it. And just
Snickers,
chill.
yeah.
Yeah. And he would just be like, "This is entertaining," because this is where their intellectual curiosity stops. They want to copy and paste. Well, you forget that he's training some of the best athletes in the world, right? So them already in itself, it's not the same experiment because they're freaks. Then not to mention, like, it's all of the other stuff that goes with it that makes this little thing right here valuable. But that actually makes a lot of sense coming from him, because he was always testing,
Always.
and always playing with things. But he was always a very, what's the small tweak that he could do to make the change. He also had some amazing people around him.
Yep.
So Charlie was never afraid to have someone put his hands on other people. Like, he had Vladimir, he had some amazing people.
He did it.
He did, yeah, but he had some amazing people.
Oh, God, yeah. And then he got heavily into the myography, pulse, as far as electrical muscle stem.
Yeah, I mean, he would do a lot of muscle stemming, not just from like while you're training. So he did a lot of stuff while you're training. He did a lot of stuff in between sets.
Yep.
But again, a lot of the people would take these modalities from rehabilitation, and he was using them for performance, so that the athlete would not have to exert as much effort, so that there's more left in the tank, so that he could have a higher contraction rate. And I mean, these are tools and techniques that are sometimes forgot about today.
Yep.
Very effective.
Well, very effective. And, I brought out Charlie in 2001. This is a funny story. So I made the mistake of trying to control Charlie.
Good luck.
Yeah. In the sense of how he was going to present. So
Q&A, baby. That's it.
Ugh.
Q&A. Ask a question. So don't make coaches. That was the funny thing. So even like fast tracking to this year, you get 100-something people that want to get into a room, and it was like chaos. And like some people, I can only work with 6 people at a time.
I know.
It's coaching.
I know.
Like, guys, round up. You're in this box. I got you. Let's rock.
I remember I walked in, everyone's doing this, you're yelling at them.
Get them together and let's coach. Like, if you're coaching, you're coaching.
I know.
But Charlie's a great example of someone who, you don't want to hinder that genius.
Wow. So I'll tell you the story. So
But I wasn't
in
there.
2001, so Charlie was coming out and he hadn't really presented and everyone was excited. So I said, "Well, you got to do overheads." He says, "Ken, I don't know how to do that." So it was so painful to watch him, because he put up an overhead and get confused, and he had his giant fanny pack on, and he's trying to, impart all these different ideas, and people literally, half the audience got up and walked out, because it was so painful. And so I went up to him and basically said, "Why don't we just do a Q&A?" He says, "Thank you." And then it was unbelievable. He basically would answer questions that usually are 5 to 10 minutes long, go into in depth, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is the most incredible stuff I've ever heard. So just a wealth of information, super nice guy. And then I had the other opportunity. We both presented at NSCA in Kansas City. And so he was sitting there by himself waiting for the plane. I came up and we're both traveling to Toronto. And so I had 2 hours. It was delayed. So he's sitting there looking at me. I'm looking at him and I'm just asking him questions like, what happened in Seoul? Like,
Interesting.
yeah, but I mean, the concepts and the ideas and the humility. And then the other time I saw him present with Mauro Di Pasquale, Tudor Boompa, and Charlie. And there was maybe, I don't know, 50, I forget who put it on. It was at York University. And there's only about 15 people there.
Well, I wouldn't imagine if Ian did it.
No, Ian wasn't there.
Interesting.
No, it was just the three of them. And then they went deep dive into the whole drug thing, which was just unparalleled.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. So I think it's interesting, like how you have these kind of like gateways to people's networks, which I'm very grateful for yours. And like that introduced me because I mean, if it weren't for Ian King, I don't think Charlie would have been on video because he was so like against the recording aspect.
Yep.
He was very big on like, you got to record your work, which was a big deal. And that's another person who I got to first meet in person at SWIS.
Oh, Ian?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that you met him there.
Yeah. 2005, I believe, or in that range.
2005? Okay.
I think so. And you go from someone who is like, that's a person who, you mentioned like Tudor Bompa, you mentioned Charlie, fascinating individual.
Yep.
One of the best at what he does.
Yep.
And, would sit in the back of the room with a hat on and just listen, just listen. And then he's very kind to other people. But, and he has his opinion, I'm sure. Charlie has Ian has his opinion.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time to extract out that opinion, and he won't give it to you unless he feels as if you're worthy.
Yep. Yeah,
But,
he can be grumpy.
You know what? I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to say this. I think he's very misunderstood.
Yep.
I also think the number one thing that I will say about Ian King that I think most people miss is his sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. Very dry sense of humor.
No, he's hilarious. I think he's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
But he's a genius with his hands. He's incredible.
Yep.
He's probably saved me from multiple surgeries. But you flip that and you go, you got a guy like an Ian King,
Yep.
Charlie Francis in the room, Ben Johnson, Bill Kazmaier, Dave Tate,
Yep.
Dorian Yates. You got Paul Check.
Yep.
You brought some of these people.
Charles.
Yeah. I mean, you got like standing room only for some of these people. You brought some of these things to market. And you talked about like learning how to, play music with the family and having that kind of curiosity. Where do you take this? Because you've done this yourself now for so long, where like at some point, I won't say it gets tiring, but at some point it's like, there is a better way, there still is a better way of doing things. And people are still they're trying to create something new. They're trying to put something into a bag, shake it up a little bit, and then give it to market. And sometimes you lose, similar to the Xerox, you lose the essence of the original copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you make sure it doesn't get diluted?
Well, so what I'm doing, and I've kind of talked about it, but I haven't, is through the power of AI. And so what I'm doing, a lot of people have heard of ChatGPT. And so the past 6-8 months, I spend probably about an hour a day looking and watching AI videos with all the top people, because this was going to completely change the world. So what I'm doing is I built my own SWIS ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Little vault database of all the information.
So what I'm going to do is
How many hours of footage do you have from SWIS?
Over 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So probably over 600 videos, and a lot of them are hour and a half long. Actually 700 videos now. And so, but what I'm going to do is upload all that information onto SWIS ChatGPT, primarily because all this information has never been seen before because it's behind a paywall. Like if you want to see the videos, you can, but you got to pay for it. So Google hasn't accessed it. ChatGPT hasn't accessed, so nobody has it. So I'm building my own so that you'll be able to type in, what does Dr. Eric Serrano say about avocado oil for the skin? And it'll
Rub it on
spit
your head
out.
and it'll turn you not bald, but
Yeah.
that is not true.
That's not true.
For everyone.
It's Justin and I. So that's one of the big things is that it's going to be the marriage of using AI and leveraging that educational component.
Yep.
And also the live. So I changed SWIS this year, learn by doing, meaning I got about 80% of the presentations interactive in some way or manner. And so that is going to be I think the future, because I mean, if someone's going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation, that's a YouTube video. Like there's no reason why someone should spend a couple of grand to sit in a room and to listen, to you or to me,
thanks.
you
Just really express my value.
as far as with a PowerPoint, because I mean, you could do a YouTube video and that, or a podcast or anything else of that nature. And so that's what I think the trend is going to be, as it should be. And that will be the marriage between the two, is that what are some of the techniques, what are some of the aspects that you can actually utilize? Because, whether it's the gamma PEMF and you've experienced it, like, I mean, unless you actually use it and feel it, it looks like bullshit. Like, I mean, it doesn't look like...
I would say most of the stuff looks like a bunch of crazy people and getting into stuff.
Yeah, the magnesium cream, it's just, all this wild stuff that technically you look at, it's like, well, how does that work? And to be honest, I don't know. But that doesn't stop me from using it. And again, going back to Charlie Francis, is that we create different ideas, protocols, experiences, and it's the research to try and develop concepts as far as why does that work. The big thing in medicine is that it's got to be evidence-based medicine or evidence-based training.
Sure.
The problem with that is the evidence is based on the technology to be able to measure it. And a lot of times we can't measure it. When I was in chiropractic college, I graduated, they said that the vertebral disc had no innervation at all, no nerve supply whatsoever. With proper staining techniques to identify the different nerves, they found that the vertebral disc, the disc in between the vertebrae in your back all the way through, is one of the most highly innervated. It has nerves going into the disc and then out to the disc and then out of the disc to different organ systems. So the stuff that I learned in school now is completely invalidated, primarily because better technology. Back then, it was evidence that, it doesn't make any sense, and now it does. And so we're going to be seeing it more and more, all these sort of things that worked and we didn't understand, we kind of threw out, are going to make sense now, and AI is going to be able to discover and to create some of the new nuances, because it thinks at a higher level than we do.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the research catches up because, I'll tell people like sports scientists, like, hey, if you really want to, find out stuff, just follow what we do. Like, get behind us and just track it. And then all of a sudden you can reverse backwards and look at patterns.
Well, you can look at patterns, but from a metabolic and also from a neurological and a muscular standpoint, I was talking to Guy Voyer.
Yeah.
And they found another quad. There's another, muscle inside of the quad.
It's not a quad then. It's a fifth.
It's a fifth. What is a quad? This quad is a quint? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, five. What's five?
Man, that's sad to hear. By the way, when you think about Guy, I was with Dan Path in Paris, talking about Guy Voyer. We were talking about diving, internationally.
And Guy Voyer was one of the top myofascial.
He found fascia or identified?
He didn't identify it, but he understood fascia at such a high level from a treatment aspect and kind of revolutionized. So he presented for me in 2000.
I never met
and
found out him through you. I was talking with you over dinner one night and saying, like, look at all this cool stuff I'm finding. And he goes, I know Guy. I was like, what do you mean? After all these years, you're telling me this now?
Yeah.
Wait, thanks. This is a the secret of like a bottle of wine and how much that will like actually open up conversation. Exactly. You get Ken and me and a bottle of wine, and conversations just feel like, wow, I didn't know that.
No, he was amazing. So he presented because he couldn't speak English, so I had to have a translator on the SWIS age for him. Yeah. So he came and presented for me a couple of times. And just an incredible man. So far, ahead of. You know what? There are certain people that are so far ahead of the parade, they're not even part of the parade. Like, I mean, they're driving by themselves.
Yeah, there's a different set of traffic.
There's a set of different traffic.
Going back to the research, I think there's evidence-based, and we feel like the research will catch up. But the issue that I have is we're experimenting on different bodies. So in my world, I only deal with like high performance. Like I don't have a lot of experience with general population. And it's not that some of this stuff doesn't carry over to every human, but there is differences to that athlete who's a freak.
Yep.
Right. We're here in Buffalo. You came down from Toronto because I'm working game day.
Yep.
I'm using the magnesium cream. I'm using a bunch of devices. I know it works because I'm putting my hands on a body. Well, that guy right now is playing in the NFL. That's a very different human than the researcher that is at some sort of college strength and conditioning program that's doing sports science work. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be testing, with someone's career. And I think that's one of the things that separates the research from the practicality is that there's a massive gap within the bodies in which they're working on.
Yep.
Because there's just not that many people, like in the Olympic space. I mean, there's just not that many people that run sub 10.
No.
So, like I got 5 of them, thank God, and those guys, like, there's like, I had 5 of them, right? And every year we're trying to be like working with 1, and that's it. And it's amazing to me when you put your hands on that body or you test them, what you see and what you find is very different than other types of sports, but other types of athletes. So the research is not only it's not going to catch up, it's just that, is there that kind of sweet spot between the technology, and the timing of working with that once in a decade athlete at the right time to see what that person's body is doing, because that body is very different than even some of their own counterparts on the field or in the competitive space. Like there's some freaks physically that they just operate and they move different.
Yep. Well, we see it in bodybuilding and powerlifting. I think the first time Bill Kazmaier bench pressed, I think he benched like 300. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous, Ronnie Coleman, when he was, young, I think 20, he's deadlifting 700 pounds. And so he was on Joe Rogan and Ronnie Coleman, and Joe Rogan asked him, he says, so, what's the most important thing? Why are you, 8-time Mr. Olympia? And he goes, genetics. And he says, well, what else? No, that's it, genetics.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, because I think he went into the Olympia drug-free. The first one.
No way.
Yeah. He went into the Olympia.
No way. I can fact check you on that. There's no way.
And he went into the Olympia to basically pay for his membership. So the gym owner, the gym owner was like, well, if you go into the Olympia, then you won't have to pay. He says, okay. So he trained for Olympia. Yeah.
I saw him at dinner one time, and it's fascinating, hard work and how much he works through it, but he was sitting down and his arms were resting on his lats.
Oh God!
The armrest was right here, and his lat was holding the arm up. And I'm like, that's just a different type of big.
So I'm at the Arnold's. I presented there with Lee Haney. So we're at the Arnold's. We're watching. So this thing shows up in the zoot suit. So he has pads in his shoulders, and it's this black and white striped jacket that makes him look about that wide. So he sits in front of Lee Haney and myself. And so Lee knows him well. So he puts his hand right on top of his head, and Ronnie looks over and he says, oh, how you doing? And sitting beside Lee is Jay Cutler, and across the aisle is Frank Zane. And, it just went on. Dorian was, two seats down.
It was like where he was.
Yeah.
So it's like up and coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just amazing, and sitting beside Lee Haney and listening to his commentary of who's going to win. It was Kai Green and I forget the other person, Phil Heath, And so they were kind of going back and forth. But yeah, Ronnie Coleman was, if you saw him in person back then, just a different.
It's like Shaq when you deal with like other big bodies. Shaq's massive.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity. Shaq picked us up at the airport one time.
What?
Yeah, I was with a bunch of basketball coaches, and I was like, bullshit, he's not doing this. It's not happening. And he rolled down the back window. Yeah, he pulls up and he rolls down the back window and he says, "Hi," out of the back window.
Because he had
The seat is that far back. Yeah, he's got tracks that are all the way back. Mind blown. I was just like, that's
insane. That's a level.
Of big. It's a different level of big, and it's cool. You're just like looking at it, like the seat is in the back seat. Yeah, and his arms on the steering wheel. Like it's not like he's just low riding it. No, he's just straight chilling. And you're just like,
well, he's what, 7 foot?
He is a big man. It's crazy. So I find it fascinating. The human body is just absolutely fascinating to me, and what you could kind of do with it. I think the body itself is just an incredible God creation, and then human potential is to me one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
And as someone who's struggled with performance and pain over many years, and probably most of it self-induced, you have a really interesting model that I've adopted, which is like, where does dysfunction come from? And you gotta have these like kind of 4 key areas, and then a 5th one that kind of like sticks out.
There's a 5th one that's just come in.
Yeah, and I think it's, you have like musculoskeletal, you have nervous stuff.
Yep. You got muscle, joint, nerve, biochemical,
and then bioenergetics.
And now it's bioenergetics. So now it's the body's capacity to store that energy. And that's more regenerative medicine from an energetic standpoint versus a biochemical standpoint. They are interacting, but if you don't have the biochemistry to sustain it, which is mineralization. So if you don't have the proper minerals, then the capacitance or the body's ability to store that charge diminishes.
Okay.
So that's where some of these different supplementation protocols, but also, and that's what I'm going to be bringing forth in SWIS 2025. I'm just working on that right now. I got some pretty wild ideas, but to be able to measure the different components, and I've been learning this for the past 3 or 4 years, on how to measure mineralization. And then from that, whether or not so you got anions and cations, and you also have a thing called zeta potential, which is the actual active force of those different, and we see it in paints, we see it in different things. It's called a dispersion. That's how actually soap works. It's called the zeta potential, and the positive and negative, and whether or not you have more positive and more negative, and the polarity of that. And then Karim Deheni, we both know Karim, who's one of the smartest guys I know in German biological medicine. So he has technology that measures it, but it was so expensive, to BEV, bioelectric, according to Vasily.
Nowadays, is the technology is getting more common, so it's becoming more affordable.
Oh yeah, now it's just small little meters.
Yeah,
you can get it on Amazon for $100.
I know, which some of this stuff is like a lot of the technology that I use, like we needed like a suitcase to carry it, and now they're like these little cell phone sizes.
Yep.
So I think that's fascinating. So Karim is testing it.
Yeah, Karim has some different testing units, and I have some too. We were down in Chicago last year in understanding and learning some of these different technologies that is coming around as far as from an assessment standpoint of which minerals you should be giving and which ones not. And even with the fatty acids, you can have too many omega-3s, which makes the cell wall very, very fluid, too fluid, so stuff floats out too much. Or if you have too many saturated fats, then that actually makes the cell wall very, very stiff and doesn't allow that normal passing of different ions. So it's understanding that, and that was Ravisi's work. And then you have the other guy that is Kerry Reams, who understood the mineralization, the ions that are in the soil, but also within the vegetables and the supplementation. So really understanding this, and this is back 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And so now we're trying to bring it forward so that people are able to utilize it. especially since it doesn't take much to actually measure it.
That's awesome. Okay, well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about, like, where does dysfunction come from? Because I think that this is something that people could take away and go, this is a good framework. This has really helped me in coaching identify where is dysfunction coming from, and then how do I actually jump in to help solve this from a holistic view, not just looking at it from a single perspective, because they all interact. Right?
Yeah.
But I think you have to know what they are individually first before you realize like how they interact to each other.
Well, I think the biggest thing from a dysfunctional standpoint is you have the muscle. Either it is contracted too much or it's basically lengthened too much. Okay. So that's one type of dysfunction, and the cause of it can be a number of different things. It can be inappropriate training protocols. It can be genetics. So genetics plays a big role.
How could genetics play a big role in like a muscle contracting? Or
so you have something called ligament laxity. And what that is from a genetic. So I have some patients that if they have their arm out, it literally goes down at a 45 degree.
You see that,
yeah.
Scary too if you're working with athletes too.
Well, absolutely. But sometimes that genetic malformation creates a huge advantage. Case in point, Lamar Gant, one of the top powerlifters of all time at 132, 148, deadlifting over 700 pounds. He had a double major scoliosis, so the curvature in his back. And it was funny because Sports Illustrated did it, and under video fluoroscopy, meaning that it's taking an X-ray, but it's in real time. So it's a video. So him deadlifting. So as he's deadlifting, he gets to here, and I've seen him lift in real life. Most bizarre thing ever, because he's about 5'2", maybe 5'4", but he gets to the bar to his knees, and the clavicle gets really close to the top of his belt because his entire body accordions down. Oh, wow. So now he has a 90-degree scoliosis. Like usually at around 20, 30, even 40 degrees, it's like, oh my God, you need to do surgery. He's a 15-time world champion. So I met him in 1984 at the Senior Nationals, talking to him. Jeez. And I put my hand on his low back, and it was like my forearm. Like, I mean, the erectors were just massive. And I asked him, do you have back pain? He says, no. And I went, so the reason why he could deadlift.
No.
Because
man, if I get turned, twisted sideways wrong.
Exactly. If we turn wrong in bed, we hurt. And so I'm talking to him and I'm watching him lift, and it's the most bizarre thing because when the bar gets to the top of his knees, the bar doesn't move anymore.
He just throws his hips.
No, he doesn't even close. No, his body accordions down.
Jeez.
So because of the double major scoliosis, the dysfunction became his greatest asset. And he set so many world records, won the world's 15 times. Great guy, could squat,
that's 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Lamar, he was awesome. He's a butcher, and he would compete and go to the worlds and win every time because no one else could beat him because he had this monster deadlift.
And at that weight, pulling that is still
unbelievable. So you want to see whether or not it becomes an impediment, so the muscle can shorten.
Okay.
The other thing is that if the joints shift and create a neurological inhibition.
Let's slow it down. So you have four areas.
Four areas. You got a muscle problem, you got a joint problem, you got a nerve problem, and you got a biochemical issue. So the muscle. So what I always start with is the joints. I want to see whether or not they move correctly, whether or not there's any inhibition as far as if I'm doing any muscle testing.
So why start with the joints first?
Because it will impact neurologically the most. As far as from a muscle, I'm always looking at, is the muscle weak because it's deconditioned, or is it weak because it's being impaired as far as inhibited either through a joint? It's called an arthrokinetic reflex. What that is, say the sacroiliac joint, this area in the low back,
sure.
you got the ilium and then the sacrum, that sometimes gets stressed, or the lumbar joints that can also get stressed, either axially or even a minimal rotation in that area, that can cause what is known as an arthrokinetic reflex, meaning that the muscles that cross that joint turn off. So if the SI joints, if there's any stress on that, if you sprain that ligament crossing the sacroiliac, say on the right-hand side, if you test the glute that also crosses that joint, it will be inhibited. And it's weak, not because it needs exercise. It's weak because that joint isn't working correctly, doesn't move correctly, or that joint has been sprained. So now you have to help heal that primarily by stop stressing it. So stop, the squats, stop the deadlifts, allow it to heal, especially if you hurt a ligament. Now you can do some energy medicine, whether it's pulse magnetic field, whether it's laser, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's supplementation. You can also use some peptides, a number of things to help accelerate the healing of that ligament. Once that occurs, then neurologically, that glute muscle will start to fire correctly.
So start joints there. Start with the joint.
Start with the joint.
Then you move to muscle.
Then what I do is, does the joint impact the nervous system? And I'm testing all the muscles that cross that joint or innervated with that area. And from that, so the joint will definitely affect the nervous system. And then if the nervous system is impacted, the muscle itself, if it shortens, primarily because it's a compensatory, the more that the joint gets irritated, it's a feedback loop, what I've seen clinically. The joint gets irritated, sends a message up to the brain, says, this hurts. So what it does is create what is known as a reflex spasm. It tightens up the muscle that crosses that joint. Therefore, it won't move. If it doesn't move, it's called muscle splinting. And then it sends a message down that all of a sudden that muscle tightens up. The muscle creates, because it's tight, creates some inflammatory products that irritate that joint. So it's a feedback loop that the joint irritates the muscle and the muscle irritates the joint. And it's a neurological aspect. So you can go in with different techniques to try and, number one, decrease that muscle tension, decrease the inflammation, and then try and restore normal range of motion within that joint. If the joint doesn't move correctly, it will always create a problem. So those are some of the different aspects that I always look at, and it can be caused by simple things. And Stu McGill always talks as far as what is known as creep. What creep is that if you're bent over for an extended period of time, you have a neurological inhibition, meaning that your entire low back, we see this with people that are always doing things in that state. You also create stress throughout that whole joint structure, whether it be the capsule, whether it be the disc, that would actually cause some inhibition, but also a weakness pattern, so that all of a sudden you need to strengthen that in a rehabilitative aspect, or stop being bent over all the time. But some people need to do it in work. Primarily myself. I'm bent over a table treating all the time, so I get treated literally weekly. I'm in a pulse magnetic field. I'm doing a whole bunch of different therapies, magnesium supplements. I'm doing IVs. I'm doing everything possible to try and be as strong as possible, because I know that my job, it's contraindicated to, healthy low back.
Of course, yeah.
I'm picking up giant guys that, pick up heavy weights for no particular reason.
Just because it's fun.
Just because it's fun.
So you have the joint, you have the muscle, you have the nerve, and then you have biochemical.
And there's two things with that. Either someone is toxic or deficient. The toxicity is usually either microbial, either it's something going on in the system that they've been exposed to, and it can cause a problem on that. And I had a patient come in. He had polymyalgia, and basically means just muscle pain everywhere. And so he'd seen all the rheumatologists, he's seen, everyone, and no one could figure out what was going on. I said, well, when did this happen? He said, a couple years ago. Well, what did you do 2 years ago? Go back into the history. He said, well, I moved into this basement apartment. I went, okay. He says, I'm moving out. I said, why? He says, mushrooms are growing in the carpet. So he was exposed to black mold.
How long?
2 years.
Jeez.
So all of a sudden, so he's moving out and he has this black mold. So I know how to deal with it, but I don't deal with it enough, and I don't have the technology to measure what's going on. So I referred them to a friend of mine, and she took great care of him and basically was able to do the proper testing and to detox that. So that's a toxicity metabolically.
And there's deficiency.
Then there's deficiency. And magnesium is probably the most underrated mineral out there. I think about 80% of the population is magnesium deficient. It's a very large molecule. It's very hard to absorb. There's 3 different ways to get into your body. One is orally, and because it's so large, it takes literally months.
Yeah.
If you use it IV, which I do, I get 1,500 milligrams IV weekly, and so that replenishes the cells as much as possible. Then the other one is transdermal, and that's a cream that you'd put on. So people, if you have, smoking, you put a smoking patch, it's transdermal. They're using the same pathway, the magnesium chloride. What Dr. Norm Shealy found is that with magnesium, topical magnesium chloride was the only one that increased out of the 3, DHEA.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I use that with our athletes pretty much daily. It's one of the things that I am treating people with. I did that today, here at the Bills. I did that with all of our athletes at the Olympics. I mean, I've been doing it for years. You've helped me get some great products that are natural, and they're really, really, they receive them well. But why is that? I know it's effective because we use it, but why is it so effective?
Well,
particularly in the local area. I mean, we've seen massive responses to muscle, both from a relaxation standpoint, range of motion standpoint, but also from their ability to contract.
Yes.
They contract so much quicker and at a higher rate. But we've also found a lot of success putting them in, certain acupuncture points.
Yep.
Certain,
Yep.
just places around the head. But why? I don't know why. Sometimes I do stuff because, someone smart like you have taught me, and I just see a great response, and I'm like, all right, I'll keep doing it until it doesn't work. But I don't know really why.
So I'll be honest, neither do I. So
that gives me a lot of confidence.
I know, but I'm going to give you some hypothesis on this. And so one of the things that magnesium does, and Dr. Eric Serrano discovered this, and he gave me a couple of papers on this, is magnesium is heavily involved in ATP synthesis, which I didn't realize. And so, and people are like, well, with transdermal, does it actually get into, into the system? And they've done serum and also saliva testing, and it does. So we know that it does get absorbed. But Dr. Serrano basically discovered that one of the reasons is that ATP is involved in, number one, contraction, which we know. The other thing, which I was unaware of, ATP is involved in muscle relaxation.
How so?
It allows the muscle to relax. That's why the increased range of motion.
We see that every time almost.
Absolutely.
I mean, without fail, you're running into any sort of range of motion restriction with an athlete that is muscular, that we're running into like a joint issue that's even at the nerve level. We see that they are significantly able to relax and increase range of motion just through topical magnesium. And the wild part is that it also increased strength. Yes.
The reason being is that if a muscle has shortened, so if I shorten the forearm flexors, I can't contract it anymore because it's already shortened.
You can't go where you already are.
Exactly. So if you bring it back to its normal resting length, which is I think what is the topical magnesium is doing, it's creating a normal aspect of it being in its normal state of relaxation. So it can flex, but it's not contracted. Therefore, it won't decrease the range of motion. And the other thing that we see is that it's really good for restless legs. So people that get one of the classic things to look at, see whether or not you might be magnesium deficient, is restless legs or your calf cramps at night.
What is restless legs?
Restless legs is your legs are always kind of moving at night.
Oh,
So you're not even aware of it, but if you're sleeping with someone with it, it's like, what the hell? Why? It almost seems like everything is moving. And so that's restless legs. So if you have that and you put the topical magnesium, literally within a month, you won't have it anymore. Your calves won't cramp up. So that's one of the main things that you see as far as topical magnesium making a difference. Now, I've seen some studies saying, magnesium doesn't make any difference. The dosages were too low.
I was going to say most of those studies in general, most of those studies are using single forms of magnesium, single absorption mechanisms. So they're using it only orally.
Orally.
Yeah,
which is tough to absorb. But topically,
it's also you're running into a raw material issue where unless you're getting really good quality, and it's also a mineral that now the absorption is based upon other deficiencies in the body too.
Yes.
So you have to, very similar to like vitamin D, like the absorption rate changes with vitamin K.
Yep.
And if you don't have that, then you're not going to receive it as much. So what you end up running into is a study that has other factors that are holding it up. And without those actually being aligned with everyone else, then you're not getting an accurate representation of that.
Very much so. And they're not, the research design usually is flawed.
Of course.
So that's one of the challenges that we deal with. So my focus is always to try and figure out, number one, how do we set things up so that we can see things? And I'd like to do more research and work with different people that are in the research area to try and understand it, because this is what we see clinically. This is what we see in the field, whether it's in the gym or on the field. And so what's the understanding? Because we know it works, so you can't poo-poo it. It's not placebo, because I have a force transducer that actually increases. I can see that there is a strength differential.
Sure.
You do something and it increases strength. Well, that's not placebo because I'm not telling them anything.
Sure.
On that. So we see the differences that people have. And
also the consistency of what you see in the practice, right? For me,
100%.
I try to make things practical because I may not be able to do it in a clinic setting, and we have to go right on the field.
Yeah.
So it has to be very practical.
And it's not a panacea. It's not that it's going to work all the time, but when it works fantastic. So that's one of the things from a biochemical standpoint that I'm starting to see from a deficiency. The other one is the adrenals. A lot of people are into an overtraining state. And overtraining or overreaching. Most people are overreaching, not overtraining, because that's a whole different thing. But you can do blood work and you can measure the DHEA in the adrenal system and the cortisol system, and whether or not it's spiked too high or it's completely flatlined, because there's different parameters around that. Or what I say clinically is that when I do any muscle testing, every single muscle on them, they won't be able to elicit an isometric contraction properly, and they look weak. Like my arm should not be able to move someone's leg, so just everything is weak. And so if you give, some adrenal support, especially the B vitamins at a higher dose, it tends to turn it around and we're able to see the changes. But then we have to take a look at, why are you stressed? Are you sleeping? How's your diet? Are you training too much? All these different components, and it can take, weeks, if not months, to turn around. If someone is very depleted, I send them out for what is known as a Myers cocktail, where you have an intravenous with a magnesium, vitamin C, high-dose vitamin C, high-dose B vitamins. Also, glutathione works really well for that. And that continually, if you use that turns people around.
I get IVs. I recommend them to our athletes. I had a really good experience just recently where, the IV nurse that was doing it. It's fun to find people that are like, they're in love with their job. I mean, she was so good that she was literally like waiting on that thump to start the line.
Oh, wow.
Like to be where some people, like, they're over there doing search and rescue and bruising.
Yeah.
It's a mess. Whereas she was so passionate about her job that she was literally waiting.
You could feel it.
Pulse bump, boop, and then that's when she runs the line. And I looked at her and I go, man, I'm proud of you. Like not even knowing her, the fact that she went down to that level of mastery for this simple skill that is super important, just to be able to start a line. I've been running IV bags since I was in high school. My dad,
oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad would like literally have me sit on the back of the bed of the truck and run a line for hydration. I'd cut weight for wrestling.
Oh, right. And he was a firefighter,
Oh,
correct?
yeah. So he would just run a line. And to the point where we learned how to do it ourselves. Probably not the best look.
No.
So like, hey, I remember the little thing. But learn these skills, and it's kind of neat to find other people nowadays that this stuff is very popularized. That was pretty much people thought was junk many years ago, and now it's modern day. You look at lasers today. I mean, low-level lasers, unfortunately, have been very controversial for decades. And now you can just buy them and they're at everyone's house. Red light therapy.
Red light therapy. Yep.
And but these things were against modern day medicine, and it was very fought hard against them.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that we didn't understand it, and but within medicine, they've also done it. So here's a story. Back in the 1600s, 1700s, guy came over from Europe, and he saw the Indians, and they were eating white willow bark for pain. And he's like, what? This is really weird. So then he took it back to England, and he said, this is what, is really good for pain. This herbal compound. And white willow bark is salicylic acid. The guy's name was Bayer. So we didn't know until 1971 what was in white willow bark, which was salicylic acid, which is now aspirin. So it's a great anti-inflammatory, but it came from, just empirically, someone ate the bark. Why, I don't know, but all of a sudden it's like, I don't have much pain. So it's, again, a trial and error. And unfortunately, that's what's happened in training. And what I want to do is create a model that we can actually assess people to find out what is the most optimal training. And the big aha for me, people always say, what's some of the big ahas that you're doing SWIS over 25 years? Yeah. The biggest one is this. In 2001, I brought out Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia. Heavy weight, 1 to 2 sets, low reps, incredible physique. In 2002, Dorian.
I trained with Dorian. Don't look like it, but that's not how he trains.
Back then he did.
I'll challenge that.
What, back in 2001?
I don't know.
No, that's what he did.
Oh, interesting.
No, that's what he did.
Our 2 months concept is from Dorian.
Now? No, he doesn't train that way.
Interesting.
Because there's reasons.
I'm listening. This is fascinating.
In 2002, I had Lee Haney present for me. 8-time Mr. Olympia. Exact opposite of Dorian. Because Dorian did Arthur Jones and Mike Menzer. In fact, Dorian, I interviewed Dorian in 2001 or 2021, and he was telling me the story that he was doing 2 sets to failure when he was
2 by 20 was his model.
Right, as far as to try in bodybuilding, and he went out to California, and Mike Menzer says, "Why are you doing 2 sets?" And he says, "I don't know." He says, "Do 1." Yeah. And he's like, "Really?" He says, "You're saving yourself." Mm-hmm. So he says, "Just do 1 to the end." And he said he did that, and he couldn't believe the success that he had from that. So I've always seen the science of bodybuilding is that all these different systems, training systems, are very similar. The art is to try and determine who should do it and how and why, because they both work.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have with evidence-based bodybuilding or training or anything else of that nature, because they obviously both work, because you got a 6-time Mr. Olympia, you got an 8-time Mr. Olympia. They're both genetic mutants. They're both on the same amount of drugs. They're both eating and doing supplements and everything else. And so what is the parameter and why did one? And when, me bringing them in, I would ask Dorian, I said, did you ever try, because Dorian and Lee used to compete against each other in Olympia. I said, did you ever try Lee's training? He says, yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I asked Lee, did you try Dorian's training? He says, yeah. He says, it didn't work for me. I would always get hurt. So he came up with stimulate, don't annihilate. So one of the things that I want to do, I don't know if I can pull this off. So no one
always try to do stuff like this.
So I know Dorian and I know Lee. And so what I would like to do, and if their schedule works out, and also if I can afford it, because they're not cheap to bring out, but to bring both of them out and have them train people as far as the learn by doing, but then also have them up on stage, have them write out the routine of how they did it, and then get some PhD exercise physiologists to explain why does this work and why does this work and what are the commonalities and how do you put it together, or how do you assess someone to see whether or not you should train more like Lee Haney or train more like Dorian Yates?
Well, a couple things to that, right? So first, Dorian Yates. The reason why it was 2 sets is the first set is a neuro set. So it's supposed to be, well, he goes 2 sets to failure, and that was where the issue was. So and I've had this conversation with Dorian. The first set is a neuro set, because we do this in sport, right? Dr. Yessis has a 1x20 model, which is about skill acquisition and then development of actual patterns. But the reason why that isn't as effective of a 2x20 model is the first time you're doing that set is the brain at the nervous system's level, the first time it's doing that movement. So if you could do the first set is a neuro set, and the second set is actually the first real set to failure, but your body has already developed that pathway. So the first thing for me, we use a 2x20 system in certain areas of skill acquisition and development of movements, is number one, 50% of the weight of the load.
Yeah, so that's the warm-up.
That's the other thing. So that's technically your one. And then the second set is your first real one, and that's the one to failure.
Yep.
And if you get capped at around 20, you're good. It's the same thing.
But Dorian was doing 2 sets, 2 working sets.
To failure.
And then Mike
Just
Menzer
pull one
said,
out.
pull one out.
The first set should be either half the load or it's a neuro set.
Yeah.
And if you can't do half the load, do the first set of 10 and then the second set of 20.
Yep.
And the reason why is and the people that have muscular, endurance at that rate, because they're built up enough, the capacity is significantly more than an average person. 10 reps isn't going to put them to failure. So that is the reason why that kind of evolved, which is kind of cool. But we do this in the sports world.
But think of this. Lee Haney is exact opposite.
Yeah.
And yet he gets incredible results.
So you've taught me something, and I want to finish with this, but you got the things that I've implemented that have changed the way that I approach coaching. So the idea that, the rewards and the benefits of the athlete's success that I've been a part of are coming from the fact that somebody helped, guide direction, right? And things that I picked up. You've had this very Bruce Lee approach, which is learn from everybody, but absorb what's useful, reject what's useless, which is an incredible model. You also are very humble in learning.
Yep.
But this ability to, create a framework of where dysfunction's coming from. And then you have bioenergetics, which is measurable. You can also feel it. Someone opens the door, you feel them.
Yeah.
Someone's in your environment, someone's there.
So I had in 2002, before you came out to SWIS, I had James Oshman, PhD out of the, you don't know who he is? Okay.
These are always fun.
So in 2002, he came out and presented for me. He wrote a book called Energy Medicine.
Okay.
And he's a PhD out of Yale. And so he has so it's called the SQUID device, the super quantum informational device, meaning that he can measure the energy coming off someone up to 14 feet away.
Yeah.
So when someone says, I can feel someone behind me, they're coming in.
And you can feel it.
And you can measure it.
Absolutely.
And you can measure it. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing. When we see this in some of the martial arts, whether it be, Tai Chi, Qi Gong, is that this energy that is coming off of someone who's sick, doesn't have a whole lot. It's very close. Someone that is powerful, when they walk in, it's who the heck is this?
The presence in a room.
The presence come in.
Absolutely.
So we can measure those different things. So bioenergetically, we're getting more. I think the Skinner does that too.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So
and there's many different ones. Dr. Alexander Karasev, who's the inventor of the Skinner, has really, he's masterful in I would say in 2 areas. One is this ability to assess. But so it's self-regulating, where it assess it, and it only works in an area where it's needed. Where if you put it in another area, it's just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And it's just this fascinating thing. It's it's not needed, so why does the machine work? The machine doesn't need to work. So it's letting your body be the response. And then the other thing is, scanner signal is very rough. It's a very harsh, hard signal. And the best ones, the ones that are like way over the top, almost are like your body receives them so well, or just
Very subtle.
it's so soft, such an incredible signal. And those are probably the most powerful ones.
Yep.
But everyone thinks that the ones that are the harsher signals are the
Less
most
is more.
powerful. And I use a lot of hard signals with our athletes, but their nervous systems are incredible. So
They can handle it.
yeah, so you work with an athlete that has, a joint issue or muscular issue that their nervous system's, on point. Man, you could throw the fire hose at them, they're fine. You do that with a cancer patient or someone's got
No,
MS,
they can't.
Parkinson's. You're going to shock their system. So
Too much.
it is impressive, like the tools and technology where they are today. But, I have this framework that you've kind of provided for me that's opened my lens. And then also one of the things that you've provided for me is muscle testing. It's this, and I know that's kind of what you're known for, but it's exercise muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll test athletes and be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing incline bench press right now. In order to hit that, you need to, hit it from this angle. And then we're going to train you through to a point to where you've kind of passed this muscle test.
Yep.
And then we'll get you to do that. But any work in that same plane of motion today will inhibit your results. It will just like layer things on top of kind of a house of cards.
Yep.
And I have found that is something that you've brought to kind of my coaching toolbox that no one's done from a programming standpoint. So,
Yeah.
Because I have to credit the people that have helped me at the programming level. And I think no one's impacted me more programming than Ian.
Yeah, he's
the way
brilliant.
I've laid out, like,
Yep.
he's like, I always tell people, Ian's going to tell you what's going to happen before it happens
Yep.
because he could see it in your programming. It's
Yep.
like the evidence is right here. It's like, there's the body, there's the program. Well, you're on your way to having this problem. And you're like, yeah. And then shit, it happens. You're like,
I know.
but he's the best at looking at the body that way, seeing it, and then programming out. Like, he could do that. But what you've done for me is in the program, I've been able to, like, it's actually just taking rocks out of the shoe.
Yep.
It's like, nope, you don't need to do that exercise right now. And you feel fine. You don't know it's a problem, but because they feel fine. And it's this compensation aspect. Athletes are really good at compensating.
Very good.
Well, for me, I work with healthy bodies a lot, and then they break, and then I get paid a lot to fix them.
Yeah.
Which is fun. When you work with unhealthy bodies, people that are like actually sick at the immune system level, then it's hard because then it's like you can't do everything.
Yep.
So I have this kind of new programming approach to using exercise muscle testing athletes, and then treating them while we're working on a car that's running. And so you can treat an athlete in this specific area while we're working around the injury. And that has allowed for us to not stop training, which is very valuable in athletics. The other thing that you've taught me is everything works until it
Doesn't. Yes.
and that's when like this kind of intellectual curiosity kicks in, this idea for like exploratory work. And more importantly, which is, I think you're one of the best in the world at, which is grabbing somebody that's in a lane that's outside of yours, outside of scope, and saying, hey, can you take a look at this? And that's
Yep.
something that I've prided myself on in my coaching.
Yep.
The athlete here in Buffalo, ironically, is Curtis. You've been to Curtis's house.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
you've been to his house and treated him.
Yeah.
And I've worked on him on a regular basis, and he's like, who's this guy? And he's like, bring that guy back. He's good, and I'm like, well, thanks, man. This is what
Thank
chopped
you.
liver now. But what's cool is like, I'm not afraid to have somebody that is, the best in my opinion, work on a body, because it only enhances my coaching.
Exactly.
It makes me look good, right? When I have the ability to find some, secret weapons and bring them to the table as kind of like an arsenal to our attack.
Yeah.
I think it's very valuable. You've taught that to me. So I want to say thank you for that. But I also want to say, like, you're doing that for a lot of other people. And this new future of SWIS, which I think has a little bit new life.
Yeah.
Because, you have this idea of like you're kind of retiring it.
Yep. I think with the new model, I think it'll make a big difference, because that's the impact, and just teaching people how to do things and introduce them to it versus just a theoretical, but also from a practical and interactive. So this year was actually just a giant experiment.
But you're doing that every day. You're testing every day.
Yeah, I'm testing every day, but I want to see whether or not the people
energy
are
in
open.
this room was great.
Oh, it was unreal.
Like the attendees were very open-minded.
Yep.
Whereas I thought in years past, the attendees were very judgmental.
Very, yeah.
And this year I felt that the people were like,
They wanted it and
some
was younger.
people don't know who's on stage now.
Yeah.
Whereas like they were so awed by certain personalities. This year, a lot of people, they didn't even know who they were. So they were like, well, let me check out what this guy is. And then like, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You imagine if your first introduction to, blood work is Dr. Serrano.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But your world will change. You'll first
like,
your
what?
first introduction to training was, was Brian Carroll on lifting. Like, well, holy crap. If your first introduction to rehab was like, Dr. Dillon or, Stu McGill on your back.
Stu McGill, yeah.
Like you got to start judging where you're coming from. So I've been able to bring kind of the people that I've mentored to an environment that has mentored me over the years, and I hope to keep it coming. So I'm excited about it. I hope to challenge everybody where it's like everything does work until it doesn't. And then find out what works for you.
And it's supposed to change. I think that's what people don't realize is that everything's going to change. And again, I've been doing a deep dive into AI in the past 6 months, 8 months, and this is going to be a different world in the next 12 to 18 months. People have no idea. It's just going to be so turned upside down. And that's one of the paths that I'm actually taking is how to utilize AI in so many different aspects and being with, I'm in some mastermind groups and seeing what is coming out. And I'm blown away. So if I could give anyone a piece of advice, start looking at AI, whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be Perplexity, whether it be all the other programs that are out there. But it's just going to be extremely exciting for a lot of people. They're getting scared, but it's like, oh, it's going to snow outside. Okay, I'll throw in a winter jacket. That's the way you should look at AI. Not that you're going to go outside and die, But I mean that's one of the things that I'll be talking about a lot more. And the cool part now is with SWIS ChatGPT, I'll be able to take 25 years worth of videos, which no one is ever going to watch, put it into ChatGPT, and now you can just type and get it from, all the information literally at your fingertips. So if you leverage it, you can really make a huge difference. And that's what you do. That's what I do. And we're doing a good job doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not going to scare you to death, but death is scary sometimes.
Yep.
I have a question for you, which is if you wanted to give to somebody to stay healthy, what would be the main things that you would
get assessed? Because you can't treat what you don't know. So that's one of the biggest things is that a lot of times, here's a classic example. What's the very first symptom of a heart attack? 40% of the time. Very first symptom is death.
Oh.
So unless you're going to get your blood pressure checked, unless you get, calcium scores and everything else, and Peter Diadamus and Tony Robbins have created Fountainhead that they do a bunch of testing, on that, and they're looking at soft plaque.
Yeah.
So that if that breaks off, all of a sudden you get a stroke and everything else. But the assessments, how well does the brain work? All these different things. So simple assessments can be very, very powerful. Not just your normal blood work, but you got to go outside the parameter. The other one is just diet. And I'm really happy, I'm in the States here with RFK Jr., that he's going to, I think, turn everything upside down as far as food.
An interesting challenge.
It's going to be a wild challenge, and he's already gone against Big Pharma. He's going against, Big Agra and everything else. And one of the main things that he's going to take out first, apparently, is fluoride out of the water.
Would be amazing.
So
many people use it for their toothpaste.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I know, but that's what they've been taught. So there's a number of small things that you can do that I think will be a big difference. So eat well, obviously hydration. And if you are going to drink enough water, God forbid, take the chlorine out, get the $20 Brita unit that will take the chlorine. People don't understand. So if you buy bread, this is the best example. You buy bread, it comes in a plastic wrapper, correct? Do you eat the wrapper? No. The wrapper is there to protect the bread. That's what chlorine is. It's a great disinfectant, but you're not supposed to drink it.
Interesting. It's a great analogy.
So you know what? Just get some to take out the fluoride and the chlorine and any other crap, out of it. I have a reverse osmosis unit. You can use distillation. You can use a lot of other things to pull out all the toxins. But I mean, just that's another really, really simple thing. So in Ontario, we have a lot of people with tumors in their large intestine. They found that trimethylchlorine is one of the major causes in 14% of all, cancers within the actual large intestine, which comes from chlorine. Simple solution. Take it out. That's all.
So it's fascinating because with Athlete HQ and our executive coaching program, which is helping executives stay healthy, the first things we do outside of doing blood work and a physical assessment, which is the first thing to kind of build their executive life dashboard, we fix their light.
Yep.
Inside their house, get them an air purifier.
Good.
So that what they're breathing is a certain way. And then we have them with a water filter.
Perfect.
3 things that can be passive. You're going to be sitting in your house. I have a picture of your desk and I want to see how you're set up. Because your chair matters, the desk matters, but how is the lighting in your home?
Yep.
And you just change the bulbs.
Yep.
Because you're going to be flipping the lights on anyways.
Yep.
So you might as well get
use
the
full
health
spectrum.
benefit. Exactly. Second, you're going to drink water.
Yeah.
You might as well make sure it's good water.
Yeah.
You're going to drink it. And I'm going to recommend you drink it. So let's make sure that there's good water.
Do you know how long you can last without water?
No.
3 days.
3 days.
Water's really important.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
So, and then the last one is air, the air you breathe, the water you drink, and then the light that gets hits. And then a $20 solution like a satellite, a red light therapy. These are all passive modalities that make massive differences in your daily, not just recovery, but also energy.
Yep.
So, that's the bare minimum.
Yep.
In business, we talk about standard operating procedures. The standard's the standard.
Yeah.
You can go above and beyond, but you got to have your base. So,
and it's a simple base and it's something that is easily implemented that you can do. So have enough water. And the second is just make sure it doesn't have, stuff in it, the shit in it that is protective. It's not shit. It's basically shouldn't be consumed because it is protecting the water coming from the plant to your house so it doesn't carry bacteria and a number of other things. It is very, very helpful, but it's not to be consumed just like the plastic wrapper is not to be consumed on the bread.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's there so that microbes don't grow. And if you leave it there long enough, it will. And if it doesn't grow, something's different about the bread.
What's the last thing is, what's the question that you're searching for that you want to have answered?
So this is, no one has been able to explain it yet. So I'll do a muscle test and it'll go weak. I'll go up to the cervical spine, which is the nerve supply to the shoulder. I'll do an adjustment, restore normal motion into the neck, and it will be strong. I have no idea, after 30 years doing this, why. And I've talked to all the top neurologists and everything else. No one has given me a reason, because I see this in powerlifting. That's one of the things that why I'm successful with the powerlifters and bodybuilders. I'm able to restore strength back into their system because it's been inhibited and not from a muscular. So I always think of 3 different things. One, is it weak because you got a local problem? Is it weak because you have a regional problem, which is the neck and the upper back of the shoulder complex? Or is it weak because you have a central problem? Did you have a concussion, PTSD, or anything else? And what area do we have to work? So a lot of times I try and work local, regional, central, but I still have yet to find someone give me a hypothesis as far as if I do an adjustment, the strength comes back. Why? And I'm still searching.
The reason why I posed this question is because I think that the questions that we're confidently asking or comfortable asking will give us, will open up kind of Pandora's box, right? It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
It just takes us down these rabbit holes. And what I've done over the years is if I have a problem, if I can't solve it, I submit that problem as a question to the people that I look up to.
Mm-hmm.
And if they all everyone gives me a completely different answer, that's when I go, oh shit, we're screwed. Something's really wrong.
Or it could be there may be more than one problem in that.
And the question is maybe the problem is in the question, or the problem's in the actual issue itself.
Or the question is too general. Yeah. So, and maybe that's interesting, because maybe that's my issue, is that it's such a general question that maybe I need to be more definitive.
I also think context matters, but if I get a response back from, 3 or 4 of them that are like all the same, and then one's off, well, I think, what are these 4 missing? And then why did he think this way? Because it takes me down this path a little bit, and it fast tracks me. It collapses time in my own coaching. It allows me to not have to go to chiropractic school. It allows me to not have to be, a physicist like some of the people I deal with. But at least use the engineer's brain when I'm not an engineer.
Right.
And, I get to borrow that for a moment that'll help the people that I work with. And I think so many people are afraid to do that.
I think so. I think because I think in this era, we think that we already have all the knowledge. And what I found over the years is that the older that I get, the less that I know. And primarily because of the amount of information. I think I saw a stat that right now in one day, more information is created than all the years combined from 2005 and back.
That's crazy.
So we're inundated with so much information. So when people say that they're an expert in this or anything else of that nature, I'm like, okay, cool. But it's just blowing up. And then with AI, we're all done. We're all done.
I don't think so. I think that humans are going to power it. And I think that there's some things that AI can't do.
There are some things that AI can do, but here's the classic example. So Mo Gadot, who worked for Google in 2000 and up, and especially with deep learning, and AI started in the early 2000s. It wasn't, with ChatGPT. That whole thing. So it's basically called AlphaFold. And what it is, the most complex thing you can do is fold a protein. And he said normally it would take probably 6 or 8 PhD students, probably 6 months to do. He says there's a new program, and it's called AlphaFold, that AI that is able to fold 200 million proteins in a day. You know what that means? Things that we could never even dream of as far as drugs or supplements or interactions or anything else. And that was in 2016. So we're talking, 8 years of it. It's going to revolutionize everything to the level, and the AI will not replace us, but people using AI will replace people that aren't using it.
I think if we adapt, and I believe if we are constantly challenging ourselves, the way that we use it will be, if it's for good, will be very impressive.
Oh yeah.
Unbelievable. So I'm excited about it.
Oh, everyone's afraid. I'm excited, because you can leverage it.
Well, I'm excited for what's to come with SWIS. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. And thank you for everything. Over the years, you've always been one of my greatest friends, and helping me and supporting me and keeping me going. And for people that don't know, I would kind of lose my shit and have to phone Justin. He's like, okay, get off the ledge. This is, we can work this through, and everything else. So you've been helpful in so many different ways as far as, well, have you thought of this and that? And I went, no, you should try that. Yeah, that's probably a really good idea. So again, you want to build a team of good people. And I want to thank you for the love and the friendship over the decades that we've been together.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It
I
has
said a lot of bottles of wine have been consumed, and more thoughts have went that way. I wrote a book because this guy challenged.
Yeah,
Man Up
yeah.
actually came.
Yeah.
He created the title. I wanted to be like grow some balls, and he's like, nah. He goes, and that was early on. And then and then you.
That was in the pizza joint.
It was, nice Italian
fun.
bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Pizza.
Yeah, and we threw together a competition. Well, I'm going to be writing 2 books, maybe 3 in 2025. One is called Powerful Health, and the subtitle will be I'm Not Sick, but I'm Also Not Healthy. Another one is on weight training injuries. So now I think I've amassed enough information on how to assess it, how to treat it, and then how to rehab it. And then the third one is energy rehabilitation. So utilizing static magnets, which you had and utilized, and also gamma PEMF and everything else. So I think with those 3 things and to be able to keep my brain rolling here.
I think we have to challenge each other, so I'm excited about it.
Me too.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to let him off the hook until he fixes me, so he's going to have to do some work.
All right.
Yeah, no matter what country he's in, he's going to have to adjust me. Where do you want me?
Right here. Bring this up. Hold that way. Hold. Nope. Hold. Nope. Bend. Hold. Nope. Hold. Nope. All right. Yeah, you're stressed. That's okay.
My life.
Yeah. So, you getting headaches?
Not been good lately.
All right. Let it relax. Let it relax. Here we go.